Alrighty, perfect. So with the ukulele, let me actually stop sharing this real quick and spotlight my video and pin my video. Alrighty, so the ukulele has 4 strings. So we have to number them so that we know what we're referencing throughout this workshop. So the very first one is the first string. That's the one that's closest to the ground. That's what we call the first string, second string, third string, and then fourth strings. Each one of the strings is connected to a little nut bolt here that enables us to tune the note higher or lower. Most of the time, tuning away from it, we're going to talk about tuning in just a second. Tuning it away from it enables it to the pitch to be higher and into it lower. So there's those 4 strings. And over here, we have frets. So frets are these little boxes here that are indicated. So some ukuleles have these little dots so that for future playing, you don't have to keep counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to know this is the 5th fret. In the beginning, for beginners, we're only going to be focusing on the first 3 frets for the time being. Double check here. Yes, and then I'll link the YouTube page at the end, but it's just Sonoma County Library in YouTube, and then we have a playlist for adult programming. So we have there 1, the first fret being number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Anytime that we play an open string, that means we're not touching anything on the fret. We just call that 0. So if I'm hitting this string, means that I'm hitting the open string or the 0 of the 4th string. And anytime that we are fretting or pressing down, it will kind of look like this. So we want to fret it down right in between the 2 lines there. And you want to do it kind of a little bit underneath the fingernail. I'm going to indent my finger here so you can kind of tell where I'm pressing down, just kind of right underneath. This is a great time. So if you like your fingernails on your left hand, I'm going to assume everybody's right-handed. If not, you can let me know in the chat because things get a little bit different. But most of the time, we play instruments. The most popular way to play it is right-handed, where we're strumming with our right hand and we're fretting with our left hand. So like I said, if you have long nails, you'll start to notice that your nails kind of push back into the wood. So this is kind of why we keep our fingernails short on the left hand, so that when we're fretting down, we're not being pushed back by our own fingernail. Alrighty, so let me go ahead and share information about tuning. So tuning is very important. We want to always tune our instrument before we get started playing it, just because we want to sound like we want to sound. So how do we do that? So I have this website here. So if you don't have a smartphone or tablet device, this website enables you to tune from your computer. Let me see if I can actually do the whole URL. Alrighty. Personally, I like to use Guitar Tuna, which is an application for Android and smartphones that also includes guitar tuning. So it's going to look very similar to what I have on the screen. So you can see the little 4. It works very similar, but I prefer if you have a smartphone or device, because you have it on you the whole time. So you don't need to bring up a laptop or a computer to tune. Alrighty, so let's get started. So we're going to first start tuning our 4th string, which is the one, again, that's closest to the ceiling. And I'm going to hit that string there. And you can see we are close, and this is the peg 2 that is the one on the bottom left. So it should be that that G note. So let's say we're not in tune. Let's say it's a little too flat. The way notes work are that it goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then it repeats itself again. So let's say we need to be in G, but we are actually hitting that F sharp. Think of sharps and flats as kind of the middle pieces between notes. So that means that we're way too low and we need to increase the tension of the string. So I'm gonna go ahead and tune away from it. And you can see that the little line went up into it. Alright, so that's pretty close. I also enjoy the one on my smartphone just because I believe the microphone is a little bit better. And you can also tell that it's picking up my voice, so that's why it's being wonky all over the place. A lot of notes in my voice. So there you go. Close enough. So now we're gonna go ahead and tune the third string. So same thing, just a little low from that C. So I'm gonna move the bolt away from it. Too much, so let me go back and go up again. Alrighty. Anytime that we're tuning a string, so let's say the next one that's the E, we're too high. So we're in the F, we should be into an E. We're gonna tune down, and we wanna go a little bit more down than the E. Just because if we tune from high to low, we're kind of losing that tension. So if we're too high, we need to go a little lower and then go up again, just because we might lose that tension and the instrument might detune a little faster. So I'm gonna let everybody just go ahead and kind of figure out tuning. If you have a question, right now would be a good time to do the little hand emoticon, or you can use the chat. And then after you're done tuning, you'll hear that nice, very harmonious. So let's say this is really not tuned, this one. And once you do that, it'll sound very, very off. So I'm gonna go ahead and go into that E again. Alrighty. Any questions on tuning? You look around, you can raise your hand. At least this one's a little bit easier to tune. A guitar has 6 strings, so it's gonna take you a lot less time to tune it. One of the things to notice too is that on the 3rd string, this is actually the thickest string. Usually with other instruments, the thickest string will be the one that's closest to the ceiling. So that's why there's this kind of nice, bright sound in the beginning when we strum. That's what kind of sets it aside from other instruments, because the bassiness comes from the middle and not the very first string. Alrighty. If you still have questions, you can put them in the chat and then I can look at it too. So that's UkeBuddy, at least for this website, that enables you to tune it to if you don't have a smartphone or device. There's also physical tuners that you can clip on, and it will basically show you the same where when you hit a string, it'll show you if you're too low or too high on the note. Alrighty, let's keep going. So this might look very intimidating, but don't worry, we're only gonna focus on the first 2 lines. So this is a ukulele chart. So these are our chords. So now that we've numbered our strings, we numbered our frets, let's also number our fingers. So finger number 1 will be our index finger. Finger number 2 will be our middle. Ring will be 3rd, and pinky will be 4th. For beginners, we'll mostly be focusing on chords that only use 2 fingers. So I'm gonna go ahead and have everybody look at this major C, which is the very first one on the top left. We're gonna talk about some of the things that we're seeing there. So right off the bat, we can see 4 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4. and we can see that there's this little number 3 in the first line. So what that indicates is that we're gonna put our ring finger on the first string, which is the string that's again closest to the ground, on the 3rd fret. So we can count 1, 2, 3, and then we just place our finger there on the 3rd string, first string of the 3rd fret, just like that. And we can kind of have our other fingers hovering it, but we don't want them to touch the other strings or else they will mute it. Anytime we're learning a new chord, we want to go down one by one slowly. And make sure that all the notes are bright and there's no like little which indicates that we're not pressing hard enough or we're pressing in a weird spot. So you can see that when I press in the metal, it doesn't make a note or a sound. So that's why I have it right in the middle. This will be the, let's see, Barbara's asking 3rd or 4th yours. It looks like 4th. So the strings are actually reversed in the chart. So it will look like that, as if you're looking at it. So that's how it looks like. So the very first line on all the way to the right is actually the first string, and then it goes 2nd, 3rd, and then 4th. So the number 3 is on the first string. So it might be a kind of the mirror look out of it. So if you're looking at it, then it would be that 3rd fret on the first string, which again is the one that's closest to the ground. So once we gone all the way, finger, 3rd finger. So there's that where you're fretting with our ring finger, which is that number 3 that's presented in that circle right there. So we're using our ring finger to press down. So nothing else is touching the uke, only our ring finger. And we can see this little kind of empty circles on the bottom of C. So that just indicates that these are open strings or zeros. So once we have that nice, bright, clean sound with all the strings, then we can go ahead and quickly brush it down with the side of our thumb, hitting all the strings with the same amount of force. And you can hear that nice togetherness right there. So that's your first chord. It's just, you can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. Alrighty. So songs are made up of chords that switch from place to place. That's how kind of music works, where you have your kind of stay in one spot and then you move to the other spot. So what does that moving entail? It means switching chords. So now that we learned C, I'm gonna have your attention into this A with a lowercase m, which indicates that it's a minor. And that is on the 2nd line. And that is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 box right there, that A minor. This is another chord that only uses one finger. So since we are here, now we want to go to the other side, which is that 4th string, and press down the 2nd fret, 1, 2, with our middle finger. So we just leave that right there. So we're using our 2nd finger, which is our middle finger, into the 2nd fret of the 4th string, which again is the one that's closest to the ceiling. And we want to go ahead and pluck that one at a time. And then after we have that nice, we strum it down. Perfect. So the thing that kind of starts with practicing these chords is the ability to move smoothly the transitions between one chord into another. So for example, let me start with that C chord again, and I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, go into that A minor, 2, 3, 4, go back, and then go back again. And you can just kind of start practicing that constant moving. And then it starts a little until it's basically muscle memory. And you're doing it without even thinking about it. Alrighty. Any questions, at least on those two chords? These are probably the most simple chords in the ukulele, just because you're only using one finger. And it gets a little bit more complicated when you're kind of stuffing all your fingers inside in this very tiny instrument. So any questions? Alrighty. So I'm going to take this time, and you can look at this chart and find one chord that you want to practice on. Don't worry on the chords that have multiple, like for example, these D over here where it has 1, 1, 1, 1. Don't worry about that one right now, but just kind of give it a try with it. And with beginners, so with the if you're already here with intermediate, let me actually talk about bar chords then. So while the beginners are trying out these simple ukulele chords. So for bar chords, a bar is when we're pressing down a whole section of the fretboard with only one finger. So for example, there's just pressing down all of it with my, not the kind of the top of the finger like that, but I'm kind of doing a tiny roll into it, so that when I'm pressing it down like this and I'm going one by one, we have these nice bright, there's no kind of clink to it. So if, at least in the beginning, to practice these kind of chords, just have your finger roll into it and then go one at a time. So I have this kind of example there in the second fret, just because this D over here has that 1, 1, 1, and then there's a 4 down there. So what that means is once we have our finger on all the strings there on the second fret, then we can place our pinky in that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it'll kind of look like this. There. Yes, so the bar chord, at least I kind of showed it here, but I'm also slightly pinching it in the back of the neck, just because it gives it a nice little grip to it, so that my finger's not the only thing that's trying to press down and nothing else is like giving force behind. So there's kind of this little pinch here with the bar chord. Let me stop sharing it for a second so I can show everybody. And let me put this link into the chat so that everybody has this chord guide. So in terms of kind of bar chords again, because there's going to be a couple chords with that similarity, is again, we are pressing down. A bar is just barring a whole fretboard. So we have our finger here. It's usually just the first finger that's barring. And I have it pressed down here, and then slightly, you can see the slight angle into it. And this is again for, it's okay if you're a beginner, this is a little bit more advanced. So once you have your finger here, then you should be able to practice and make sure that you have everything's bright. Because then with this section, you can kind of move around and go a lot of places and have that same um, position. Ready? Let me go back and share the chord chart. Any questions on any chords, you'll kind of realize that a lot of the times your fingers will be squished together. So for example, this E minor 7 where we have a lot of our fingers like that. Let me see. All right, we have a question. Go ahead.
So on that little D, where it says there's three ones, right? So
Yes.
that's the first finger, and it just covers there.
You can actually cover everything. I would actually recommend covering all the second fret, just because if you try to cover only the first three, it's almost impossible because your finger has to like do a little lift. So I would first trying to play that D is first putting your finger there in all the second fret, making sure that everything is bright first, and then adding that pinky in that fifth fret.
Okay, so if there's three in a row, you can put. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why they wrote it like this. One of the things I can think of, I'm looking at that B minor, which is kind of the opposite, where you're fretting this one. I would recommend just doing, you can do both. In the guitar, it's a little bit more complicated because you have a lot more room to kind of cover. I think with all these frets or these bar chords, it's okay to have them all just laid out where they need to be. I think it'll be a lot easier to play those. Alrighty. Everybody's still tuning. Lisa, did you have a question about tuning or just specifically that Uke Buddy is just tuning? Nope. Okay, perfect. So chords are kind of a lot of things. most popular songs will only have major chords, which are these C, D, E, and F. And then they will have minor chords, which are kind of the sad chords. We call them minor chords because they sound a little sad. For example, this is the C major. And then this would be the C minor, where you can kind of tell if it had a bad day or not. And then there's the kind of C chords that are a little bit more the jazzy chords that are a little bit more jazzy. And then you have those C minor 7s that are even more sad and jazzier, both of them at the same time. You can really, but a lot of just popular music will only have these kind of four types of chords. If you get really into it, then they'll include the major 7s and then the movable major chords, but we're not going to deal with that today. One of the things too that I like, that it also includes just kind of the notes if you're interested about how the notes work there at the bottom. But with this chord chart, really give a try to as many as you can, just because then they just become a bank of in your head. Terrible analogy, but that you have in your memory and say, oh, we're playing this song and the first thing it's a C chord, and you're like, oh, I know what a C chord is, great. And then you just start and being in that C. So I would really focus on the first two lines there, the majors and minors in the beginning. But like any good thing, one thing, or like Romeo and Juliet, you just can't have Romeo without your Juliet on your other hand. So let's talk about strumming, because the left hand is only one part and then the right hand is a completely other part. You can also start writing your questions here too if you have any questions on this chord chart. And then we'll kind of get to play something too. So I wanted to focus kind of on a lot of this stuff is tools that you use because not everybody will like the same songs, not everybody likes the same musical styles. So these are really tools that you can use that you can transpose into what you want to play. But I'll give you a song example at the end. But let's talk about strumming for a little second. So these are ukulele strumming patterns. A lot of popular music is counted as 1, 2, 3, 4. You can turn on anytime the radio or mostly any song, and you can kind of hear it out, and you can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and they might stay on that kind of same feel or switch it, just because this is a way for musicians to kind of get in sync with each other, especially when you're playing with somebody else. So I want to have your attention on the first line that just says all downbeats, single strum. So we have these 4 boxes of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. We call these bars. So the first one has 4 bars of 4. So the first bar is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have the number 1, and then we have a capital D at the bottom. So that capital D is a downstrum, D for downstrum. So how we count that is, let's say I'm just playing my C chord, just that one ring finger in that first string of the 3rd fret, and I just count it 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Of course, no song stays like this for 5 minutes, so that's why we switch things up. So let's say we have our C, and then we have our A minor, which is the 4th string on the 2nd fret. So let's say we play this C for 2 bars. So we play it 8 times, but we don't count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or else it gets very tiring and I need to drink more water. So that's why we focus on 1, 2, 3, 4. So for example, in that first line, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 1 bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. Switch. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Back again. 3, 4. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect. So that kind of, not the tricky part of it, but the kind of discipline to it is making sure that the transitions are smooth and there's no delay on the switching between the two. So I'm gonna go ahead and have your attention in the second one, which is downbeats and upbeats, and these are the double strums. So it looks very similar to the very first one, but now we have these pluses or ands, and underneath those ands, we have a capital U, which means upstrum. So how we count that, it would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so on. And the way I strum up after I do my down, I strum also up in the at least for the beginning for beginners right there with that. Also my thumb. So down, up, down, up. And that may be a little tricky, at least in the beginning. And I'm also not strumming everything just because it creates this heaviness with that 3rd string. So usually when I'm strumming up, I will only strum the first 2 strings just because it creates this nice airiness to it. It's also a good time to talk about that the uke, actually you can get 3 sounds out of it. There is the sound that's strumming from the sound hole, the sound that's strumming here, that's a little bit more country-ish, I want to say. A little more rougher. There you go. And if we strum up here, we get more airiness even. Uh, yes. So there are. So Luisa asked about the calypso strum, and we have actually more. So after this one, I'm gonna go over how they mix with each other, since we don't want to just do this all the time. That's why we spice it up. And I always love food analogy. So it's like you're cooking something, but it really switches the flavor once you use different spices. So that's what strumming is to be for food. A lot of different spices. So how we kind of play this again. So I'm again using that C. It'll count it as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 4 and switch. 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And you can tell with that plus, the switch is faster because as soon as you go up on one chord, you have to go down with another chord. Um, so this is the ends are really the tricky part of it. So anytime that you're practicing these, remember to say it out loud, count it 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and because it's about getting it right and not getting it fast. So if we go a little bit more down, we have the number 5. So I'm going to skip those, but I'm going to focus on number 5 just because we have these lowercase numbers, letters here. So these indicate that the strumming is slightly softer because we emphasize one single note. So for example, that F, I have my first down strum, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I still say the ands just because that space is very very important, and you don't, if you're kind of counting it in your head in the beginning, you might not realize that you're speeding up or slowing down in certain sections. So we also have the Latin strum, or they also call it the calypso strum for number 7. So this is what a lot of traditional, when you hear ukulele, this is the strum they're talking about. So with number 7, let's just keep staying with C since it's an easy chord, but you of course you can switch it up and get different sounds. So with any of these strumming patterns, you can write like, oh, today I want to practice going from this chord to this chord today. But with the Latin strum, we have that kind of a combination of both the first ones where we're really emphasizing that 1 and 2, and then it kind of starts going a little smoother. So how that sounds, it would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and it might not sound like a lot right now, but with practice, that's where we're kicking it into high gear, where it's that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. See how it kind of switches it up completely from going a little slow. So this is a great one if you just want to focus on one strumming, but it is a real trick to not play that. Maybe your instinct is to go down on that 3, but you have to step back a little bit and say, I'm going to slow down there a little bit. Any questions on these strumming patterns? The 11 one is kind of more reggae too, where we're not really focusing on the down, but just one and two and three. And once I'm going up, I'm closing the string so that it stops making sound. That's that nice. Or else it just sounds up, 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 and it just drowns out. So at least for 11, it's very important to close the string so that you get that sharp ding, 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 ding. Another kind of strumming is kind of brushing down with your fingers. So starting off with the pinky into the ring. And that's a little bit more advanced too, where we're just, the kind of tricky part is doing all the same fours in all the strings with your fingers. But if you're a beginner, focus on at least the first couple and really internalizing that 1, 2, 3, 4 until it drives you crazy like me. Make sure to have a bottle of water close by. Any questions on strumming patterns? And of course, this is just kind of popular music. That's why it's also called common time. But other styles of music might be counted as 1, 2, 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and it really switches up how it feels. Alrighty. If no questions, let me go ahead and kind of show you some songs to kind of practice along too. So I also included in that email, let me make sure that this one is also included in the chat, that they're for the strumming patterns. Um, but this is kind of PDF too that includes some kind of beginner songs to start off with. So for example, Eleanor Rigby only has 2 chords. And since we kind of already know how to read a chord chart, it looks very similar to the one that we have before. So that F is very similar to that A minor. It's just how we just have to include that index finger on the second string of the second fret. And you can kind of sing it. Look at all the lonely people. I'm not the best singer, but you get the point. So you can kind of use those strumming patterns that we learn and say, look at all the lonely people. 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 2, 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And then Eleanor Rigby. I think it's picks up the rise. Yeah, it's a little faster, but just to start it off with, it's okay to go a little slow. So this is kind of what you're gonna be looking at most of the time when you're learning a new song. They'll include the chord on the top of where it starts, and then the changes that when it happens will be included on top. So you, if you're familiar too with the Eleanor Rigby song, you know that there's that kind of switch. All the lonely people. That's not with the voice, but you know there's that little change because you're hearing it. Oh, there's that change that's happening there. So that's when you also know, as a instrument player, that you also need a change in that particular section. And I also only use the second line, the 1 and 2, as an example. But with this one, you can use any of these and it will be a completely different like feeling to it too. So really explore those two. Same thing with this one. Kind of learning that. So since kind of my philosophy is that everybody has their own taste and popularities of songs changes too. It's important that we also have tools that we can search songs that we want to do. So, for example, I want to give your attention to my favorite website in the world, and some of you already know this. Is ultimateguitar.com. So, I'll kind of do a brief overview of this website. So, this website is a user generated community where people post stuff like we just saw with the chords and the lyrics, and they just share information on the the chords for each individual song. So, for example, I was looking up. This is just the main page, but I just want to focus on this search bar here, and I want to say I want to learn um, "Blowing in the Wind," and it also auto generates too. So we're gonna go ahead and click on "Blowing in the Wind," and it's going to give us a bunch of options here at the top, but I only want to focus on ukulele, so I just want to click on that so that it can drown out all the other guitar and bass options that we had. Like any good social media, it also includes stars and ratings, but this one's actually matter. Just because users will vote on the most accurate or interpretations that they like or they feel is closer to the original. So, for example, we have the artist Bob Dylan, and we have here on the right the one that's 96 stars. So, this is the one that we really want to focus on. So, I'm going to go ahead and click that. It gives us the tuning, which is our just standard tuning. It also includes the chords that we're going to be focusing on. It will just lay it out all the chords. Ultimate Guitar is kind of weird that this C, even though it's on the first line of the first fret, it says third fret. So I would focus more on the chord chart that you have um, for it. And somebody pointed out that the G here is different than the one that we have here. It's similar. It's the same one. So this G chord is the same one as the one here. But I would probably just go back into the chords because you can see it a lot better than the website here. So we have here that they show you where the chords are and where it changes. And of course, not everything will be 1, 2, 3, 4. There might be switches that are a little bit faster, or they're just 1, 2, and then it switches to a different one. Let's see. Let's go back into that G 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So the we had a question about why is this G different than the other one, and there's the same. It might just look a little bit weird. 1, 3, 2, and 1, 3, 2. So they're both the same G chord. One of the neat things too is that if you don't want to keep going back and forth into the top of the chords, you can actually hover your mouse and it'll show you too in a tiny bit here how to play that chord. For whatever reason, let's say you don't like that A minor, if we click on that little line here to go right, it gives you different variations on how to play that same chord, but I would really just focus on the first one. This only happens if there's a chord that's a little difficult, and they might give you an option on how to do a different one. But this is Ultimate Guitar, and I strongly recommend using this if you're looking for particular songs. And once again, let's say I'm just looking for the Beatles. Or actually, let's just go even better, Beach Boys. So to narrow everything down, again, I'm clicking that ukulele tab on the top. And then we have God Only Knows, Girls on the Beach, Wouldn't It Be Nice, and the more traditional Sloppy Good. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that 23 because that seems to be the highest rating. And this is to a good song to start off with too, where it shows you the chords there. Alrighty. Any questions on Ultimate Guitar? A couple times they will give you the strumming pattern for it. Let me see if I can find one with this strumming pattern, because I think it'll be a good thing to use. Let's see, God only knows. Ooh, you can see why it's a very complicated song to play. Yes, Ultimate Guitar is free to use. So this is all user generated, and you can just hop in and search for anything. Back in 2015, there was a lawsuit with Ultimate Guitar about copyright, but they fixed that. So there was a time period, a very sad time period in my life where I wasn't able to find things, but now we're back in business. So it's everything. Yes, you don't have to log in to use this website. Um, Okay, any more questions on this website? Of course, you can also some artists might have their chord charts in their own websites, or you can Google, if you can't find anything here, you can Google Beatles, ukulele, and then the name of the song. And most of the time you will find something similar to what we're looking at here. Alrighty. Of course, we're a library. We got to promote our library services too. And we have a bunch of electronic books on ukulele and different styles of playing too. So let's say you're interested in a particular style. We have many materials on it, including aerobics. Look at that. Jazz, fingerstyle, songs, and biographies about a bunch of materials. That's all free with your library card. And sometimes songbooks too. Looks like the Lumineers for ukulele, which is nice. Let's see. Any questions on anything, really? Um, Again, these are all tools that you use. So really practice the left hand, which is that switching around chords. And then after you find something, you can write down, oh, I'm doing C for 2, and then I want to switch to B minor, and then practice your right hand, because then you'll be ready to basically play any song after that, at least in the style that you want to. Um, any questions? I know it's a lot of information, and I appreciate everybody being very patient. That's why we record this and make it available, because it's a lot of information. But I'll leave the floor open to any questions before we end. Unless nobody else has any questions. We have a question. Thank you. Well, thank you. Alrighty. Well, I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of the afternoon. Again, yes, so the next ukuleles, so this is the last one for the month of July. We're actually switching the time to Wednesdays at 4 p.m. starting on the registration is live in our library, but let me put the next one too in the chat so you can go ahead and register. So the next one will be on the 5th of August, and it will be again at 4 p.m. So it's roughly in about 2 weeks. And there'll kind of be a mix of this too. So it's very important that if you do come back, make sure that you have questions, because then we can talk about more specific things and just kind of make this more of a community of musicians too. That I really think that it's an important part of playing music too. We always say at the end of our sessions that playing music is kind of half of it, and listening to it is also the other half, because you'll start exploring and hearing things you haven't before, and it just kind of opens up this whole new world of everything. Song next time. Sure, I'll practice a song. I'm really bad at like learning full songs. That's kind of my kryptonite. um, but so, oh, we have a question. How long do you get the fingering down? Uh, it depends. I would say that if you're starting to practice, I would only do about 30 minutes a day, just because you don't want to get your fingers too exhausted in the beginning. And if you're just starting to play, you're still building catalysts on your fingertips. So that starts building up, and then a little later on, in like a month or so, then it won't hurt as much. Also, the uke is a great instrument in the beginning, just because you'll realize that there's not much pressure that you have to push down. It's one of kind of the easier instruments to really press down. So you can kind of keep in mind, if you're pressing really hard, you can let go a little bit and see if the note is still appears.